here we are. We almost made it to the end of the semester without having to go online, but I think that this is probably the best option because there's so many spikes with COVID happening right now. We don't want anybody to get sick, and also with me being pregnant, you have a more compromised immune system, and so I just wanted to be careful with that as well. We are going to talk a little bit about parasites, so protozoans and worms. I'm going to break this lecture up into a couple of different videos, partially so that it's easier to post, and partially just I think splitting up the topics makes sense. So, we are going to start with protozoans. So these are non-fungal unicellular eukaryotes, okay? So if you got a question on the exam, you know, what are protozoans? Are they eukaryotes or prokaryotes? You would say they are eukaryotes, okay? Unicellular means that they are made up of one cell, okay? With the non-fungal aspect of this, one thing that differentiates protozoans from fungi is that they lack a cell wall. So we know that human cells don't have a cell wall, they have a plasma membrane. We know that some types of fungi have a cell wall, and protozoans don't have a cell wall. Okay, so we're just gonna go through this together, and I might add to some of these notes, but I just want to kind of outline the things that I think are important. Excuse me, they're eukaryotes, and therefore they're usually larger, and they are more complex than prokaryotes. So like I said, they don't have a cell wall. They do have a complex internal membrane system, just like human cells do. Human cells, remember, have organelles. So we have mitochondria, we have Golgi, we have endoplasmic reticulum and everything. We have excuse me, nuclei. So we have these divisions in our cells, and those within those divisions, very specialized processes take place. Okay. Okay, so we're going to be focusing on flagellated protozoans, amoeboid protozoans, and apicomplexans. Excuse me. Okay, so flagellated protozoans. Actually, before I even get into this, so a lot of these things can exist in two different forms, cysts or trophozoites, okay? You're going to see cysts bolded a lot in your lab manual. So cysts are a form that the protozoa can take when they're traveling through a harsh environment. Like, for example, if they are out in freshwater in a lake for 3 weeks, they can exist in the cyst form. If they're traveling through the human body to get to the small intestine, they can be in cyst form. And cyst form is basically just when the protozoa will get smaller, and it kind of has an armored shell, so it protects it from its harsh external environment. So they can exist in these cyst forms for quite a long time. Yes, and infection usually takes place in cyst form. Like I said, if it's traveling through a harsh environment, like your body, it's going to be in the cyst form. And then once it gets to where it wants to make its home and reproduce, it will turn into the trophozoite form, which is the motile form, the form that can actually get around with the flagella or anything. So I just wanted to make that clear because I don't think the lab manual actually really talks about the difference between cysts and trophozoites, but it highlights it a lot, so make sure that you know what a cyst is. So flagellated protozoans are classified that way because they have this whip-like flagella right here. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, whip-like flagella that allow the cell to move around. We're going to talk about two different types of flagellated protozoans. We're going to talk about T. cruzi and Giardia duodenale. So T. cruzi, um, it moves around like its plasma membrane is kind of shaped like a fin, which will allow it to move from one point to another. So that says it right here. So that allows movement. This movement will occur within the blood and the tissues. People contract it via the bite of an infected kissing bug. Or a blood transfusion of infected blood, and this will lead to Chagas disease. So here are some of the symptoms: the fever, fatigue, body aches, headache, rash, loss of appetite, diarrhea, and vomiting for the first few weeks or months. In the majority of people, it will, after that, become a symptomless chronic infection. So you'll still have it, but you won't be showing any symptoms. However, in 1/3 of the people, there can be long-term GI problems and cardiac problems that can result in death. Treatment is with antiparasitic drugs. Excuse me. So this mostly occurs in Texas and Central and South America. It's not something that is more likely to show up. So it says that the carrying vector of T. cruzi is the kissing bug. So the bug will actually feed on humans while they sleep, and the bug will defecate while it's eating, and that is how the T. cruzi escapes the bug, and then it burrows into the human. It tunnels into their skin where it multiplies. But like I said, this is mostly Texas, Central, and South America. So, um, yeah, it's kind of nasty stuff. Giardia duodenale. I think that this is really cool. This is like a really interesting protozoan. Here is what it looks like, this picture right here. It almost looks like it has two eyes looking at you, and it's this like funny kind of kite-shaped thing. The two eyes that you see are two nuclei. It has two nuclei, so so it's teardropped, as you just saw in the picture, and it has two nuclei in each cell. It looks like eyes, and 8 long flagella. People contract it via consumption of water contaminated with the cyst. Remember, it's in cyst stage because in the water it's just trying to survive, that harsh environment. So it lives in the intestine and produces thick-walled cysts that can survive in cool water for up to 3 months. Like, that's a long time for them to survive in that environment. So the infection may not cause symptoms, but most commonly causes are giardiasis. It's colloquially called beaver fever. I can't speak today. It includes diarrhea that can last for weeks to months if untreated, and can cause death due to dehydration. But only 15% of people with Giardia develop a fever, and it says that treatment is with antibiotics and antiparasitics. So, people can often ingest this after drinking mountain water. They're like, oh, the mountain water, we're camping, like, it looks clean, so it probably is. So you can actually ingest this via drinking mountain water when you're camping. It can be harbored by rodents, or if there is sewage that is contaminating water, that's another way that it can be contracted. Okay. Amoeboid protozoans. I'm sure that everybody's heard of an amoeba at some point in time in school. Amoeba is it's a cell that can actually push out parts of the cell plasma membrane, so it kind of forms arms, and then it will like retract those arms, and it basically gets around by like pushing these like projections out of the cell to like move around, and it can also use those projections to engulf food. The projections are called pseudopods or pseudopodia. These protozoans include Entamoeba histolytica. It's a uninucleate cell, so it just has one nucleus and can produce thick-walled resting cysts with 4 nuclei. So people can track to this via consumption of water contaminated with the cyst, just like Giardia. Entamoeba histolytica lives in the human intestine and produces non-flagellated thick-walled cysts with 4 nuclei. They can survive in moist environments for multiple weeks. It doesn't cause symptoms in 90% of cases, but the 10% of people that get it, they have a rough time because it can include bloody diarrhea, and it can lead to liver damage and cause death. So treatment is going to be with antibiotics and antiparasitics, just like mentioned before. Apicomplexans, so these lack structures specialized for cellular movement. They spend most of their life cycle in cells, all right, so intracellularly, so they can like live in blood cells in humans or anything like that. So they live inside host cells. They have a life cycle with multiple host species, and all apicomplexans have an apical complex. So this is specialized proteins that allow it to actually get into the cells. Plasmodium species that can infect humans and mosquitoes and cause disease, the disease malaria, are a real global concern. But that usually occurs more in like the tropical parts of the world and not so much North America. Okay, so if you got a question on the exam about, what causes malaria, that might be a good paragraph to go back to. Okay, so Toxoplasma gondii. This is a really, really interesting protozoan. It reproduces sexually inside cats, and it forms thick-walled cysts that are released into the cat's feces. So other animals or birds can ingest those feces and then become infected themselves. So once ingested, the cells first infect the intestine, then they move into the muscle and the brain tissue. It's really interesting actually, because if a mouse becomes infected with Toxoplasma gondii, they get really their behavior is changed. And so they actually kind of display these characteristics where they seem attracted to the cat. Like they will be out in the open and engage with the cat and not show any fear whatsoever. And then the cat just sees this mouse is here and out in the open and just eats it. And then it completes the life cycle of that Toxoplasma gondii. Because it's going to reproduce sexually inside the cat again, right? So people can contract this by ingestion of microscopic cysts from cat feces, so cleaning during litter boxes. A small percentage develop the symptoms known as toxoplasmosis, but this is it's risky to women who are pregnant. Some of the symptoms are muscle aches and can include eye problems, and there's fever. Individuals with compromised immune systems may have neurologic symptoms and experience seizures. So if you think about somebody who has AIDS, they're immunocompromised, so they are at risk for a lot more symptoms. So pregnant women who are initially infected with this during pregnancy can miscarry or give birth to infants with neurological symptoms or tendency to experience seizures or nasal malformations. And then your book says, like, this is why pregnant women are not supposed to clean litter boxes. Treatment is with antiparasitic drugs. Okay, so what I'd like you to do, I'm going to stop the video soon, but what you're going to do is I'm posting some prepared slides of these protozoans, and you can look at them and then you have to draw them as part of your lab homework, okay? So go ahead and take care of that, and then we'll move on to the next part of our lab.